Welcome to Career Profiles. We are broadcasting from Full Sail University. My name is E.F. Ortega. Thanks for tuning in. You know, I've been in the communications industry for over 20 years, and I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, celebrities, mid-sized companies, and even the startups. And during my time, I've met a lot of fascinating professionals with powerful life stories. They've inspired me during my career and have given me a unique perspective on achievement and leadership. And the more that you connect with these types of individuals, as I have, you have an appreciation for their success, and you find certain parallels between all of them. Every one of them has a different story, a unique struggle, and a compelling reason for their rise to the top. As a storyteller myself, I'm always looking for the next great story that will lift the human spirit and give people hope for a better future. And today's guest will certainly do that, I promise you. With that in mind, the purpose of the Career Profiles podcast is pretty simple. It's to elevate and inspire students and professionals. How? With real-life stories from successful professionals in their given industry. For this episode, we will be focusing on live event show production industry, and this episode also applies to those in the audio arts space of entertainment. Now, today's guest not only has extensive experience in the live event production industry, but is also a highly sought-after professional event producer and a successful business owner, public speaker, and a licensed, authorized audio and video lighting integrator who represents some of the best brands in the industry. So just to give you a lowdown of who he is, he's toured with The Walking Dead, many famous celebs. He's worked events for companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, and various government agencies. And he currently stage manages a concert with country artists like Justin Moore, Bret Michaels, Chris Janson, and Jefferson Starship. So this guy has seen a lot of different things, and it's a pleasure to meet him. I present to you the one and the only Gabriel Aviles. Gabriel.
Good to see you, Mr. EF, the one and only. Oh my God. It all goes downhill from here.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I was looking at some of your social media and some of the pictures. I have a whole bunch of questions, first of all, but I saw a couple of pictures of you in military gear. And I'm like, man, what's the story behind that? Obviously, this guy's military, but I didn't realize the extent of your experience. So please, before we even get into your career, explain to us just a little bit about how you got into the military and what that entails.
So first of all, thanks for having me. Really cool to be back in Full Sail. I'm going to hold for 1 second on the military stuff just to say that this is very cool to be here. You know, there's no like inspiring and no, this is cool to be in this space. I came here many, many years ago. I was probably 19 years old, and I was in a band. I was in a jazz band, and my buddy found an opportunity to come record here on this campus, and students recorded us, and it was incredible, and it was just fun. And we just did a live recording, didn't even think anything about it. And I get a call about a month later, and somebody says, "Are you home?" I said, "Yeah, I'm home." He said, "You need to go turn on your TV to BET." I'm like, "What?" And I turned on BET, and there I was, playing.
Wow.
And the students, they had produced this thing, and it looked like we were playing in a place with 10,000 people. And there was like 5 people in the audience, and one of them was my girlfriend. But it is really cool to be in this space, and what an honor to be in Full Sail. Just really neat. So, yeah, the military thing, it's definitely a thing. It used to be a thing, and now it's back a thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I joined the military back in when I was 17, and I'll go ahead and say it. I'm 52 years old.
52 years young.
52 years young. Yesterday was my birthday, so this is a great birthday present. But yeah, I joined when I was 17. Just had some issues with just getting in trouble, you know, like many kids' story, and found an opportunity to get into the military. And the good thing is that I wasn't a real good student, but I was really smart. So I did really good. I had very high ASVAB scores, and I got into missile systems technology. Wow. Which was really cool. A lot of electronics, a lot of communication between systems, and so I got in the military, did that, and just really let the military do to me what it needed to do to me, and that was to really make me into a man and make me into a student and a wonderful soldier. So I committed when I became part of the military, and I am a veteran's son, and so I just committed to let the process take its course in me, and it did. And I served for 14 years, 7 in the Army and 7 in the Air Force, it was very interesting because the kid who had a lot of trouble in school, I was graduating top of my class at every single school that I took with the military. So I was in the Army for 7 years, and then I found an opportunity to move over to the Air Force. I was kind of forced to because my job, the missile system, they did away with it. It was a Raytheon system. I don't know if I'm supposed to say name brands, but Raytheon came in with a new missile system, and then I was without a job. So the Air Force, they found an opportunity to grab us, and I went over to the Air Force and worked in communications there as well. And then the real funny story was that I decided I wanted to get back near Central Florida. So I found my job was needed at MacDill Air Force Base. Well, a little Google would have helped in that I didn't check what kind of unit I was joining, but I ended up joining a Joint Special Operations Task Force, and Colin Powell was my boss.
Oh, wow.
And that was neat. We were a combat communications unit. And then, of course, 9/11 happened, and I was sent to war instantly. So I was gone before 9/12. I was gone and served for a year and a half on my Enduring Freedom combat tour. And it was pretty interesting.
That's
that I can't say cool. That I could say interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, we definitely do appreciate your service to our country. That is a story in and of
All in
itself. I mean,
itself.
we could do probably 5 episodes on that, but
That's classified, sir.
so that's classified. Can't really talk about that. But yeah, one of the things that you said that I believe it's important for people in the industry, in live event, and just in general, students who are trying to get into entertainment, is adaptability. You talked about how you learned a specific missile system, and then you had to change and switch. That's one of the themes in all of our lives, is change and having to be able to adapt. And I really want to get into that as we go forward. That's very important for all of us to understand, for students of the industry and for people in the industry, professionals, is to have that ability to swivel and just change on a moment's notice here. So the second thing that I really wanted to get into was, okay, so it's obvious that your career was shaped by those principles that you learned, by what you went through in the military. Now, I'm just curious, were you involved in anything audio, video in the military? Like, were you learning that as you went forward? Or?
Right. That's a great question. So in the Army, it was strictly a missile system that I worked on. There was communication between the launcher, the radars, the command facility. There's a lot of communication that goes in between there. The thing about it is that it was very proprietary. So it's only a Raytheon system, right? Then I get to the Air Force, and I find that the Air Force now was opening to different systems that some people are now more familiar with in the civilian world. Unix systems, SunSpark stations, and obviously a lot of computer screens and monitors. So I was working on an air surveillance computer. So now you got planes that are being watched, and then you have these displays going up. So now we're dealing with stuff that the students here at Full Sail, they would see. They would see a lot of those displays. Some of the stuff had to have multiple inputs, multiple sources coming in from different locations. Some of these systems would be communicating from NORAD. And so you have air pictures now that are coming from outside, and then it's being jumbled together and overlays. And so it's just a lot of sources coming in and out. And that is something that, man, as we're talking, this is so organic as I'm thinking about it. This is what students deal with now. They're dealing with different sources that are coming from different places, how these video signals are routed. And then also there was audio too, because the airplanes that were sent to, I'll give you an example. Somebody here from Orlando, Payne Stewart. He was a golfer from Orlando.
wow. Yes.
Payne Stewart, he left Orlando and he was flying to New Orleans, and his airplane, they lost communication with it, and they sent 2 F-16 jets out of Panama City, where I worked, to go see the plane and see what happened. Was it hijacked or anything like that?
Wow.
And they found that they were all deceased because probably the venting system is what failed in the plane, and they had died of I think it's called hydroxia or something like that. Somebody's going to get on this podcast and say, no, it's called this.
Yeah.
But they passed away. And so there's also an audio signal where the command station is talking to the pilot is communicating back, and this is all wireless. This is radio signals. So there's so much in the communication systems that you can spread your wings, and everywhere you look, it's all about communications now. So there's definitely things that I touched there. Then when I got into the combat communications place, so that was fixed communications. Combat communications was very different. This communication equipment is mobile, and now we were dealing with, this is where the students' ears are going to perk up. Now we're dealing with video teleconferencing systems. These are VTC. They do that here. Today we know it very simply as Zoom or Google Teams, meeting. And so back then, this was now kind of the birth of those.
So that was the cutting edge.
Yeah,
that
this was
like
cutting edge. Nobody had this. Nobody had this. So I remember seeing my first 100-inch monitor, and it was actually a plasma. Kids, do not pick up a plasma. They're about 1,000 pounds. And this plasma, I saw the price tag. It was $250,000 the military paid for it. It's crazy.
Wow.
But it was a big 100-inch monitor. And so we had video teleconferencing systems where the generals in the field could talk to the joint commanders like Colin Powell that were back in Washington. So now you had that video signal and the audio signal. And to make it really cool, then it was encrypted. So it was completely secure. And guess what? Now Zoom can do that. So.
Yeah, it's like nothing now. It's
right.
Grandpa and grandma can do it like nothing. That's pretty important. That's fascinating to think of how you started off, and you started to get that feel. Now, just a question. I just thought about this, but when you were in theater or in your career in the military, were you already working in the live event production? Was it, or was that kind of what you did after, like the timing wise?
You asked the perfect questions. I don't think I've ever been interviewed this good before. So, yes, I was already in it. I was raised in church.
Okay.
I'm a pastor's kid, and many people in houses of worship in the faith-based community know that. That's where a lot of this gear is. As a matter of fact, the biggest consumer of audio video lighting gear is houses of worship.
Yeah.
People don't know that,
Makes
but
sense.
it is houses of worship. They consume the most. Every church has to have video systems, projectors, screens, LED walls. Every church has to have a sound system, either line array or point source, microphones. Every church has to have video routing systems where you send a signal to the projectors or to an LED wall or to downstage monitors. And every church has to have lights. You got to dim lights. Oh, it's worship time. Going to dim lights, make it cool.
Yeah.
And pastor's going to preach. You got to see your Bible. Let's bring the lights up. And so I was already in that world. And so I grew up in the church world. And so I started out in a very small church, and I saw how we had to budget and we had to get gear. And so I was forced to learn it as the pastor's kid. I was thrown, voluntold to do all this stuff. And then my brother and I were both the first musicians in the church. So I had that aspect of it.
Oh.
And then many years later, I was actually on the tech team of a very large church with 10,000 seats. Now I'm dealing with line arrays. Now I'm dealing with big sound systems.
Top of the line, yeah.
Top of the line, video systems, big, gigantic, 30, 40,000 lumen projectors and everything that goes in between, video switching, live performances, stage managing, miking people, choirs. Our choir loft was it could hold 400 people in the choir. And so we had to have all these mics, and it was just absolutely incredible. So I was already exposed to this stuff even before I got into the military. And to me, that was so powerful because I had all my background, the kid learning how to run cable. Back in the day, we had speaker cable. You had to like throw copper. Nowadays, man, these young people are throwing, I do it too, but we're throwing internet cable and fiber.
Yeah.
And that carries everything. But back in the day, it was just, okay, get 5 people to pick up this roll of copper. And so I had all that background in the houses of worship, faith-based community, and then coupled now with this cutting edge equipment that the military had, along with that discipline and fortitude and flexibility and ability to adapt. And then something else happened, how I got thrown into the AV world.
Okay, and we will definitely discuss that because that's something that's very interesting that I want to get into. And we're still talking about adaptability,
Right.
And about having to adapt. And obviously, your journey, the way that you were primed was through growing up in the church, growing up and kind of being around that scene, and then your military experience sort of really hyper prepared you. Now, as you were in the military, when did you get involved in, per se, the live event production? Like, when was the first time that you actually got to be able to work and get paid for live event, and you were getting your first taste of it?
Right. So after, wow, that's a good question. How about I do the full time?
Okay.
Going into it full time. So I served in active duty. I served in National Guard. So even while I was in the military, I was still, doing events and stuff like that. Now, my first real paid gig, this is actually a really cute story. I was 16. So it was actually before I joined the military. And so this is going to be for all the Full Sail students who want to be a DJ. Okay, because this is really fun. So at 16, throughout my whole childhood, the church is like a community center. So everything happens there. There's funerals, there is weddings, and all this stuff that's happening. So as a pastor's kid, you're kind of forced to work these events, to clean. That's all you get to do. Hey, son, you're staying here to clean. And you didn't get paid because, my dad would say, well, I put a roof over your head. So it's like, oh, great.
You had the choice.
This is not a good deal. So then my dad, he dropped me at a wedding, and I'm in the church, and he says, I'll come back and pick you up. Just let me know when you're done. So there was no cell phones. You had to go to the church office, pick up the phone, and call. So I was at that wedding. I was really bored, and this is terrible. So we were a Baptist church. Those weddings are pretty boring. There's not a lot of dancing and stuff going on, and I just love music, right? I love music. And I had my little car and I had my CD player, and we had those little CD players. You could put a single CD and you couldn't hit bumps because it would skip. And
I remember those.
So I went up to the head table, and I saw the bride and groom, and I said, hey, do you guys want me to play some background music? I was bored out of my mind. Had nothing to do with them. And they said, oh, that would be nice. So I went to my car. I got my album of CDs. Those things weighed like 10 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I went to our little AV closet, and I got a Ross mixer. These young people full say, like, what the heck is Ross? Okay, it had wood sides, all right?
This was many moons ago.
Many moons ago. So I got this Ross mixer, and I got these PV speakers and a PV CSA 600 amp, all right? So young people, look this up so you could just laugh at me when you see this gear. And I put this stuff in. There was no speaker stand, so I threw them up on these counters where they were serving food, and I'm playing music, and it was nice. So now I'm like, oh, I'm chilled. All right, cool. And Lionel Richie all night long, and I'm just like having a good time playing jazz. It's stuff that I liked. And the bride and groom, after the wedding, they were so happy. They handed me $150.
Oh.
I'm 16. Okay, this was like back, in World War II time. So they handed me $150. And I was like, wait, what's going on here? This is great. So the next wedding I found out about, I told my dad, hey, I need to go work this wedding. He goes, what wedding? No, there's a wedding coming up in our hall. Okay. Why do you want to go? And I said, well, because I want to do the Lord's work. And so
very good.
This is terrible. This is terrible.
Very
Lord, forgive
good.
me. So then, but this time I was prepared. So I approached them in our little bridal suite where they would get ready. Hey, my name's Gabriel, and I'm going to be representative here at this church.
Networking.
Yeah, so I'm like little entrepreneur. And I remember had one of those, back then we had those big fat ties. They looked like aprons. They were so fat. And I just said, hi, I'm here to represent the church. And I would like to know, would you guys like some music in your reception? And they said, yeah, that would be nice. I said, okay, great. So now I go back to the car, get my CD album. I go back to the AV closet, but this time I grab a carousel, the CD carousel where I could do multiple CDs. And now, then I had the single player one too. Now I'm mixing. Now I'm fading in between different songs. And after the wedding, they handed me $250.
Oh.
Okay, I'm 16 years old. And I said,
this is a major thing.
This is a business. And so even though I'm the busiest guy in the world, I own 2 businesses, and what we'll talk about later, I'm still in, right? All this stuff going on. I still do weddings, but I charge so much stinking money that it has to be really worth it. And so my next wedding is wedding number 707. I've been doing it for over 30 years.
That is fascinating. So you started off as sort of a DJ, like
DJ.
impromptu, and then it just kind of organically grew.
Right. The power of the DJing business that made it really good was it wasn't just the ability to play music. And this is my advice. That can be another podcast. We talk about just DJing. It wasn't just about playing music. I had to learn the real craft, which is how to talk, how to lead a room, how to interact with people, how to own a room and create an experience. That's where I learned how to be a producer.
Okay.
I was now producing events, and I was creating these crescendo moments and these epic entrances for bride and groom, and the daddy and daughter dance, and saying the right thing for the first dance, and just creating these moments and fading the lights up and down. And if the students can picture me sticking my hand up in the air like an artist going, oh, I could see myself creating these events. And that's really where I learned how to be a producer, was at the ripe age of 16.
So you were creating these moments for these people that they will never forget. Obviously, it's going to be recorded forever for posterity. They're going to see this and remember, and they're going to remember how you made them feel. So it's not just about audio and video and doing live event. It's about creating a moment.
Yeah, and what did I think? I didn't even know what I was thinking, that I'm creating these special moments. The reason why I've done so many events like that with my gear, like I own my own gear, and going out there, and to me it's fun. Like I bring my whole family, we do it together. So people say, what? You're like DJing an event and you own a couple companies? Yeah, well, guess what? If you're getting paid $3,000 or $4,000 for one day of work, you do it too. Right?
If it pays well, you're gonna keep on doing it.
But what's interesting is I did those at a young age, and I never marketed. I don't have a web page doing that or anything. It was all word of mouth.
Wow.
And it's been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events. There are people who got married that I did their wedding, and I've done their children's sweet 16s and quinceañeras.
So the return customers.
Return customers. Now we just got, maybe there's going to be some babies born. I could do a baby shower. I don't know, somewhere.
So they that's definitely, it's obviously this industry is a relations-based industry. You have to be able to make that impact on people's lives, and they'll remember you. They'll remember you the next time they have a special event or a corporate event or whatever. I wanted to get into the two sides of your live event business, because as you went forward in this, obviously, word of mouth, people were saying Gabriel's awesome. You have to get him for this event. How did that, as that began to grow, how did you manage that? I mean, did it happen all of a sudden, or was it a gradual thing? How did a business grow to the point where you became a business owner? Because there's a difference between working live events for a show for somebody that hired you and you owning your own business. Tell us about that transition from working jobs for people and getting to the point now where you're like, I think I'm going to do this on my own. I want to be able to do this for me, my own business.
Great question. And so sometimes things aren't as hunky-dory as they tell you on the movies, that it's like, oh, somebody came up with this really great idea, and they sit down and they go to a think tank, and then they come up with all this stuff. That is not my testimony. That is not what happened. So the production stuff was always a part-time gig for me. So I was always either working, I mainly worked for the government, and then I went to work for a private software company. They actually hired me out of the government. So they were a provider for one of the government jobs that I had. And they totally broke the rules and they cannibalized me out of there. But they took me into the private sector. So I always had the production stuff on the side, hired gun here and there. Definitely the DJing and MCing. It's like I could never get away from that. So in 2013, I was working for that software company. They will remain unnamed. They get no free advertising from me. But I had a major conflict with a sales manager, with the national sales manager, and I didn't do anything wrong. And she would really admit that I didn't do anything wrong either. The problem was that I was getting leads. I was the top sales guy for this quarter, and I was getting leads from where I used to work because it's all relational. So I had a relationship with the people that I used to work with, and that's where the leads came from. And so she kind of thought it was an unfair advantage, like, oh, nobody else in the team has this advantage. I'm like, wait, but that makes me a smart hire.
An asset, yeah.
I'm an asset, so I'm killing it in the numbers. And she didn't like the fact that that happened. So we parted ways. No, we didn't part ways. I was fired.
Okay.
I was let go. And it was just creating an environment where there was a lot of jealousy with other team members.
Yeah.
So now I'm on my own. Okay. So this is the actual most important part of the story is right here. In October 2013, I was let go. They kept, because I didn't make it to December, they kept my year-end bonus. It was about 30 grand. So imagine,
wow,
that was gone, like vaporized. Like I didn't get that. And then there was no severance package or anything. So it was terrible, right? And then I had never not been without a job since I was 15. I went to work physically when I was 15. And I was mowing lawns since I was 7. So I've never been without work. And of course, 16-year-old kid out there hustling church weddings. So I was always hustling. And here I found myself with a family, with a house. And what am I going to do, right?
Wow.
I applied for unemployment. And those who have lived in Florida who remember that year, there was a lot of political things going on, and they redid the unemployment system, and it didn't work. So I never got it. And here I am with no unemployment, and I had these crazy qualifications. I'm working for a software company as a regional sales manager. Yeah, go get it. Go try to get a job when you have that kind of resume.
Yeah.
I almost want to lie and say, yeah, head fry cook at McDonald's. That's what I want to put. But I was having a real hard time, and I met with my dad. My dad, he's such an encourager, of course, pastor, and he just encouraged me and gave me some advice and told me his story when they came to Florida. And so it's just one of those things that I had to dig my way out. So I gave up. I said, well, I'm just gonna have to find something else and put myself out there. And so I get a call from a buddy of mine who owned a production company, and he heard through the grapevine that I had been without work. Now they knew that I knew gear, I knew speakers and stuff like that. He said, hey, I got this event in Orlando, and it was at one of the hotels here in Orlando where all these events happen. Everything around that whole Disney area, there's so many properties out there. And he said, hey, I got this event going on. Can you come and help me? I said, sure. So I went out there and didn't even ask him about money or anything. I just want to get out of the house. So went out there, and like all our young people Full Sail know, you got to dress black. So he said, hey, you need black pants, you need black polo. And I'm looking through like, man, I don't have black. So I remember going to Goodwill. I had no money. So I go to Goodwill and I found some black jeans, and I found a black polo. Didn't even fit right. I probably looked like ridiculous. I was like, wow, these are skinny jeans. Okay. So went to the event and then just knocked it out of the park, right? Interacting with the clients, setting up audio gear, and of course I'm networking for him, and I'm acting like I work for his company full time. And he came up to me after. He said, hey, listen, man, my client really likes you. Can you stay the whole week? I said, oh man, I'm here to serve, man. No problem, great. And I jumped in to this event working for free. Like I didn't ask him for money. I was just happy to have the opportunity, because you got to pay your dues, right?
That's true. It's true.
And just because I paid my dues in the industry, I thought on my side, this was something totally different, right? This is now what we all know is the freelance world.
Yeah.
So I I did the event the whole week, and then he handed me, a big chunk of money. I didn't know. And I'm looking at the amount of hours that I worked. I said, wait, and I was doing the math. This is really good money. I've never made money like this. And so I said, this is a thing, right? So then he invited me to do another event. I went and did that event. While I'm walking the halls through the hotel, I'm noticing all these other guys wearing black, right? So I start meeting them. Hey, and they're like, hey, are you a freelancer? And I didn't even know the word. I said, yeah, of course. Then you go around the corner, Google, what's a freelancer? And I started meeting these guys, and they said, hey, can you work an event? And that was in 2013, and I have never turned back.
Wow.
I literally walked away from corporate America, as they say, clocking in, clocking out, since 2013. This is 2025, and I have never turned back. And so I took my freelancing thing, and I found out that the tax laws are in your favor if you own a business. So instead of me continuing as a freelancer and losing 30% of my money from our wonderful IRS, if you're listening, IRS, I love you. Not really, right? But I started a business, and I started having my clients pay the business and the business pay me. Now I had a tax shelter.
So, okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting, because I think for the most part, people that are in audiovisual industry, especially the people that are here, people like me that are students here, we look at live event and we see that as the ultimate coup de grace. That's it. That's the end game. And from what I'm seeing, you did that. You did the live event deal, a whole bunch of venues. You met a whole bunch of people. But then, as we're talking about before, adaptability. Because of your experience and your background, you learned you had to adapt. And when that well sort of kind of ran dry for a season in your life, you had to sort of switch gears, and you moved into kind of owning your own business, corporate. So, am I right in saying there's a separation or a line of demarcation between live event and owning your own business? I mean, is that where you moved into?
Right. So they work together. They work congruently. You have to put these things together to really maximize the benefit from it. Working live events, you're either going to, there's many positions within the live event business, all right? There's the festival side, which is what we call, that's your concerts, touring. We call that festival business. And then there is the corporate side. And so corporate side is very different. These are conventions that that come here a lot to Orlando. This is one of the convention capitals of the world, is right here. We have actually the largest convention center under one roof in the United States, the Orange County Convention Center. So there's a lot of events that happen here. And many people, they want to be on the music side, but they can choose. They can be on the music side, or they can be on the corporate side. On the music side, of course, you can further break it down to studio recording. And then on the corporate side, you can also break it down even further into live, where a lot of people are coming to, or you have virtual events, which was very popular after COVID, where people are going to a studio like this and they're Zooming or doing Google Meets, and they're pushing an event out via live stream. But when it comes to what I decided to do, was I decided to start the business for a few reasons, because I wanted to be able to maximize my profits. If you're working for someone, there's going to be a limit on how much you can make, because they have to make money off of you and they have their own overhead. So I decided that I was going to to adapt and be very flexible and allowing different streams of income. So I was continuing to do the DJ MC business. That's not all the time, right? So I took my price point, I made it really high. That way I could get quality versus quantity.
Yeah, to make it worth your while, yeah.
Right. So I started doing that. So those were coming every now and then. And I was ending up with events that I wanted rather than having to do a bunch of them. And on the freelance side, I kept working with labor companies. They're like headhunters. They find you events, but whatever they pay you, they're having to charge 15% more, because they have to pay your workers' comp, your liability insurance, and all that stuff. And so they have to make a little money off you, and they have to make money. So, but then also with my company, I was able now to find my own clients. This is something very important for the students. Do not ever, 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 this is the golden rule in the business, do not cannibalize. If you worked for a company under a labor company, never, ever, ever work for that client, that end client, without talking to the labor company, because you got to them because of them. You don't never violate that. So for all the students, if you want to get kicked out of this industry and you want to have a bad name, that's the number one way of getting blacklisted, is by doing that. So I started finding my own clients, and I started contacting production companies throughout the United States that started hiring me for different positions. And so during my time in live events, I started learning how to be a stronger audio engineer, how to be a stronger A2, which is the person who mics and manages. I started learning how to be a better video assist, how to actually dial in projectors to be a projectionist. I started learning the different positions to increase my value as an event producer, right? And then I started finding opportunities to produce events where I was the one owning the gear, where I was the one actually running the event. That's a whole different level now. Those are a totally different set of numbers, where I was using my own gear. And it's interesting because if you don't own gear, Orlando is great because there's many production companies here. You can cross-rent gear, so I don't have to have this 50,000 square foot warehouse.
Yeah.
I could cross rent from these wonderful providers we have here in Orlando, and I could still produce events, but the paycheck came to me, and then I would decide, where the money was going. Now, instead of just working for someone, now I was employing people.
That's different.
And now I'm able to this day, I'm able to employ people in the industry, freelancers, and take good care of them. And the interesting thing was, because I know what it's like to be in their shoes, I take care of them.
Yeah,
I take really good
definitely.
care of them.
So all right, that's interesting. So you kind of moved along, and you kept the things that you learned, the industry, the parts that you were in with, as far as the DJing. You kept that going as a separate source of income. Then you went into live event. Then you went into owning your own business. Now, as this is happening, I saw some pictures on social media, and I have to ask this because this is very interesting.
Oh boy, I wonder what pictures he saw.
All right. I saw a picture with you and Michael Rooker. Okay. Now, for those who don't know, Michael Rooker is Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was also in The Walking Dead as well, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about how that happened, because when I saw that picture, I said, wow, this guy's with some major people, some heavy hitters. How did that happen?
Yeah, so Michael Rooker, the reason there's so many celebrities and artists that I've had the privilege of working with. He was an interesting one, and he was one that we actually did our picture together. We did a photo op together that he asked for, which was really cool. It's like, wow, I've never been asked to do a photo op. It's not a Photoshop, by the way. It's a photo opportunity, right? So he was part of a fan convention that I was part of. There are fan conventions that go around the world where people get to meet different artists, different celebrities, and so they tour. And so we obviously have a lot of them that come here to the city of Orlando. I was on tour with them, and most of the cast of The Walking Dead was there, and Michael Rooker was part of The Walking Dead, and he was also part of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's when a lot of people got to know him, was because of Guardians of the Galaxy. And he came to an event, and he was going to be on my stage. So I used to DJ and MC my own stage, and I had another buddy of mine. Actually, I'm totally going to drop his name because he's such a good friend of mine. His name is Dave Solo, and he helped produce some events at Universal. Great guy. And so I would MC and DJ, but then he was the actual host. So he was the one that actually was the panel leader that would ask all the questions, and we had this wonderful chemistry together. That's a whole nother story of how we came together, but him and I, we would do this stage, and it was called a live stage. And this stage was supposed to be like some little side thing that they were trying to do in between this main stage that you see at these conventions. Well, this ended up being the hook. This is what people were asking for, was this stage. So there was no chairs. There was no gold, platinum, VIP status. It was a free-for-all where people would just flock to the stage, and we would just interview these celebrities and give out prizes and all this cool stuff. So Michael Rooker sneaks up on me while I'm playing a Pit Bull song. I'm playing Pit Bull, and he sneaks up behind me, taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Hey, what is this crap you're playing?" Sorry, Pitbull. Pitbull, I love your music, by the way. It's just whatever. He didn't like it. I loved it. And it was Fireball. So I was playing Fireball, and he's like, "What is this crap you're playing?" And I turn around, and I'm like, "Oh, Mr. Rooker." This guy's such a loose cannon, right? His handlers couldn't control him. And he says to me, he says, "Hey, I want something different when I walk up." I said, "Well, what do you want?" He said, "I want Santana."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I reached in my repertoire, right, my little hard drive, and I put Black Magic Woman, and we had the build up, dun 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 dun. I got a black Michael Rooker, and he comes out and forget it. The whole place.
Timed, yeah.
Oh, it's perfectly timed, and created that moment. And then he met with me after, and he took a picture. He did an Instagram live where he was videotaping. He put his arm around me, and he said, "This is my DJ." And after that, I was officially his DJ for all these events. And he would come up, and we'd talk about walk-up songs and all that.
How cool is that?
What a great guy. He was a lot of fun during those years. And I started with them back in 2016, and I toured for quite some time.
That is interesting. So you worked with a lot of companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, I believe I was reading, and also government agencies as well. We're closing in on time. We're running out of time, but I do want to ask a question about this, because you talked about stage managing. I believe it was for it was I'm not sure the event, but I read that there was a prominent country singers, and was that recently or?
Yeah, so we're producing this event. I have a business partner of mine. We've partnered on an event that we do in Ohio, and it's a festival, and it's a wonderful, wonderful festival where a lot of music artists comes, and it's like a 4-day event, and they have the way we did it, I remember it was 2 country nights, 1 80s rock night, and a Christian night, and it was a wonderful event. And so we had all these country celebrities coming. And we had the 80s rock night. To me was the best, because that's my era. So all these musicians were coming. Bret Michaels absolutely slayed it.
How cool is that?
Jefferson Starship. I grew up with their music, and so we just had these really cool bands coming. And what I had learned on the corporate side, because the festival business is usually a little dirtier. And it's a little bit rougher.
Grimy,
yeah, it's grimy. It's like a cool grimy, right? But the corporate side is obviously clean,
sterilized.
Yeah, it's sterilized. I do pretty well there, because I've created kind of a shtick, clean shaven, suit and tie. They know me as the VIP guy. I give this VIP experience.
The white glove.
Oh man,
I
totally white glove the experience during the show, even though I don't get to white glove it while we're building it.
It's that, yeah.
It's a wonderful experience to provide that level of service. So what I did was I provided that level of service on the festival side for all these artists. And the first year they did the festival, they told the promoter, who really owns the event, like we own the production side, the equipment, the crew and all that, but the promoter is the one who owns the event. And he's the one that gets to pick the production company. Well, wouldn't you know it, because of that level of service that they received from my partner and I, they said, we need that production back. We need that production company back. So here we are with this VIP treatment rolling out. My wife was wonderful with doing talent handling. And so when you do things at a high level of service, it makes you stand out. And when you stand out, I always tell my daughter, she's in the business too. She's currently in the military as well, and she's going to become an officer in the military. But she works in the industry with me, so she'll work one show and she'll have enough money for a month.
Yeah.
But I've always taught her this. I've always said, be remembered. That's the secret with this business. It's be remembered, because you're not in an industry where you're able to really market yourself on Google and here's what I do. It's that word of mouth, which is powerful, and it can fill your calendar. I book out now about 1.5 years in advance.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's and because you're remembered, and people say, "Hey, listen, we just did this convention." And at every corporate convention, what do they do at the end of the convention? They announce next year's convention, and it's going to be in Las Vegas, right? And they put it on the screen. So then I just wait 30 seconds after that event is done, where on communication, on our comms, they talk to us in our ear and they're saying, "Hey, it's a wonderful event, everybody. Man, we appreciate all of y'all. It's great." And they thank everybody on comms. And then after that, we just start unplugging gear and start ripping it out. And I always hear the same thing. They go, Gabriel, can you just stand fast for a minute?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? So then the producer walks up to me and says, "Hey, Gabriel, can you please book this date for next year?" And I said, "I already did." So I see the dates and I book them ahead of time because I know they're going to ask for me back. Not because I'm arrogant, because you have to have a certain level of confidence and to say, I am the best at my craft.
Yes.
And you cannot do this event without me. And it is my joy to serve you as a client.
All right, that word, serve, because that's kind of been a theme throughout. Obviously, when you were younger, you were serving in your church. When you went to the military, you were serving our country. When you went through that transition and you lost your job, unfortunately, you wanted to serve and you helped and you kind of moved into something else then. And it seems like that's a constant theme. Which is fascinating because a lot of people in the live event industry, it's sort of like you are a sort of a hired gun. But what's putting you or setting you apart, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're not just a guy that knows the ins and the outs of the industry, the technical side, but you're a people person and you know how to connect with people. And I think that's very important for all of us, for students to understand, is that you have to be able to know how to professionally deal with people so that they'll want you back. And I've been seeing that pattern. It's a very interesting pattern. Now, before we end, and there's so much more. We're going to have to do a second episode because
I'm totally down. As long as we can record here at Full Sail.
There's so much.
They got the best gear here, by the way.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's really great. But I'm interested. There's so much more. We haven't even gotten into the new industry that you're in, and
Right.
we really want to cover that because it's a lot of different things. It's a great story as well. But for students, tell us a story. I believe you told me earlier about a student, not a student, but a person that was an understudy of yours, Erin. Tell me about her.
Erin is a great story night, and I believe this is a great closing. And I'm not closing it out, by the way. I'm just following your instruction. I see the clock going. We're almost there. I have to come back. But what a way to end on a student. So Erin, and I'll totally dime her out. It's Erin Harrell. She lives in Memphis, Tennessee. Man, we all want to be in Memphis in the music industry, and Nashville. It's a great place to be. So Erin, she actually served and volunteered on an event that I produced with some of these Walking Dead casts, because I ended up being the production company. I used to work for a production company being on tour, and then I ended up producing an event for them for many years. And she actually was one of the volunteers that was given to us because to keep the price affordable for my client, because I wanted to grow the event, and I knew the client did not have super deep pockets. I said, you know what, we're gonna help you. We're gonna help you grow this event. So we're all gonna chip in. We're gonna make it more affordable for you. And as far as stagehands, just give me this many volunteers, and we're gonna help them. We're gonna teach them. We also saw it as an opportunity to help young people maybe find something that they like to do. This girl, she found what she loved, right? So she was already going to school for production, much like many students here at Full Sail. So she was in the recording industry and live event industry as far as her studies in Memphis. And they gave her to me, and it didn't matter what I gave her to do. No complaints, no pushback, No talk back, nothing. Just, man, and some of the stuff was hard. It's a little bit of a challenging venue. You had to carry stuff a long way. Sometimes you can't use wheels and you had to carry stuff. Never complained. And she wasn't getting money for this. It's not anything that she was getting money for. So she thought. And we just put her to work, and we're there like practically a whole week. We have to build it. Then we have to go through our rehearsals, and then we do the event. There's panels, there's live events. And then they're like, oh, pop-up party at the pool deck. Hey, Aaron, go pick up that little sound system and take it down to the pool deck. And then you're ripping that thing out at 1 o'clock in the morning. Then they're like, okay, panel stage is going to start at 8 a.m. So we're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, eating breakfast, 6:30 on the panel stage, setting up gear, setting up wireless mics. And this thing just goes on
On no sleep.
On no sleep. This is our industry, by the way, students. Get ready because you will never sleep again. All right. So we're doing this event, and she thanks me at the end. We say goodbyes. We're hugging. She didn't know, but I'd already hit up her parents. Her parents actually do security. They're cops. They do security for the event. And I said, hey, can you quietly get me her Cash App or Venmo or something like that? And so they got it to me. And she hugs me and she says, Gabriel V, my wife, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to serve you guys. It's always that word, that buzzword, right?
Serve.
She was just so happy to serve the company. And so we sent her a little money, and then she was in, right? And then when we came back to that city, because we produced every year, we produced that event in the city, then it turned into 2 times per year. We told them we request her. Like, we want her to be part of the crew. So by the 3rd event, so the second one, she was volunteer again. By the 3rd event, I straight up brought her as part of the team. Just told her, look, you're no longer a volunteer. You're part of my crew. So I made her a paid part of the crew, great hourly rate, took care of her, fed her. Now she's freaking out like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, this is crazy. I'm spoiled. And we took care of her. And then some time ago, we're talking last year, not some time ago, last summer. So she calls me and she says, listen, I want to do this for a living full time.
Wow.
I said, well, you're kind of in the wrong city. Like, if you were in Nashville, that'd be one thing, but I can only help you on the corporate side and my one festival that I do per year, in this big gigantic festival. I suggest you just come to Orlando, right? So she comes to Orlando, flies herself. She bought her plane ticket, came here on a risk. We put her up. So she's friends with my daughter. So we put her up in the house and told her, look, there's no guarantees. And I just told her, look, you're going to come to events with me, but I can't pay you because these events that I have in the summer that are very thin in the summer anyways, I'm being hired by someone as a freelancer. So we'll just bring you. I'll ask permission to bring you, and maybe you find a way. Just trust me, we can do this. She came in. She immediately starts slinging cases and volunteering and stuff. And every single event that I took her on, they hired her. And then,
wow.
And then we did an event where we actually had the stage for Redken, the hair people, and Paul Mitchell. They were on our stage. We had LED walls and audio systems and all that. And they loved her attitude. And so they took my role as the stage manager. And then I had, there's another role called an A2 where you're actually miking talent and helping that experience. So they tell me, hey, can you go be an A2 and can we have Aaron as the stage manager? And I willingly stepped out. They wanted a female.
Yeah.
And so I said, Aaron, this is your moment. Like, go. And I'm cheering her on. And think about it. It's a quote unquote demotion for me.
Yeah.
That's not it. We have to send the next generation to fly. We have to push them up to success because maybe one day she's going to be the project manager and pull me in, right? So I pushed her and she absolutely slayed it and killed it.
Wow.
So she went back to Memphis with this new attitude. She is now gigging over there. She's got so many jobs. She's booked for so many jobs. And she calls me one day and says, hey, I need you to write a letter of recommendation for me. I said, gladly, who am I making it out to? She said, I can't tell you that yet, but just put it to whom it may concern, right? So I wrote this beautiful letter. We had her on our crew for a couple years, probably 5th event, and then she did all that stuff in Orlando. I wrote this wonderful, wonderful letter for her. And she calls me and said, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you what that recommendation was for. and I was picked up by the Grammys.
Whoa.
So now she did an internship with the Grammys, and now she's going to Las Vegas. Is that where it's at? Is it? I don't even know where the Grammys. Hollywood, Anaheim, Las Vegas, somewhere over there on the West Coast.
On the West Coast,
where they do the Grammys. She now is part of that crew, and she goes there, and so the tears of joy that we have had, and so we're Hispanic, we're Puerto Rican, and she is totally Caucasian. So I said, this is my white daughter, and she's wonderful, and we love her, and we're so proud of her.
That is amazing.
But it's all comes back to the same thing. You have to go into this industry knowing that you are part of the service industry.
Yes.
Okay. Don't get high on your horse because you know how to mix on a $120,000 Avid S6L. Yes, guys, I do know model numbers. And so if you know how to do that stuff, just understand that the people that own that console and the people that own these production companies, they are people. They're people who, if you serve their needs, they will serve your pocketbook and they'll take care of you. And when you serve people, people will translate that into finances for you and it'll set you free.
So that's I mean, the same parallel with Erin, is with you. It's that spirit of service. And you've kind of, obviously we know your background. We know that kind of was ingrained in you through your father, through the ministry, through, serving your country. And it's kind of been a common theme. And that's one of the things that's fascinating. And we're closing right now. We're wrapping things up right now. But for all the students that are in the live event production industry is you have to have, yes, you should have the knowledge. You should have the ins and outs of the technical aspect, but you also have to have a certain mindset, a certain humility that says, I'm willing to help, so that people will remember you. People will say, well, that person stood out. People who get these degrees, they all know their stuff, but it's the ones that stick, that people remember, which are the ones that have the staying power. And that's kind of the thing that I've been seeing with you and with Erin is people that have that mindset, those are the ones that succeed, and that's very interesting. Now, I have a question. I'm going to end with this, okay? And maybe we definitely have to do a second episode because this is another story that we need to get into. But I'm going to ask you this. Don't answer it, and then we'll wrap it up, and then we will do another episode with this story, which is fascinating because this is another aspect. Another thing that you've added on to your tool belt. I'm going to ask you a question. Don't answer it, okay? But tell us what happened on March 5th, 2020. That was during the pandemic era. And you're going to hear this story. And again, it's fascinating to see. Again, one of the themes we talked about was adaptability. And in the next episode, you're going to see what happens when all fell apart. The pandemic happened. Businesses were falling apart. The live event industry took a huge hit from that. I mean, was wiped out. And what you had to do to overcome that, to adapt and to succeed and thrive. So we're going to end it on that note. And this was fascinating. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Students, that was a lot of stuff. It was a lot of information, but it's very interesting. I think students need to know not just, people in the industry, people that have succeeded, but why and what they've overcome. And you could see the patterns here. There's a lot of patterns of adaptability and overcoming that I think are very interesting. In the next episode, I want to get into what happened to you on March 5th, 2020. It's fascinating stuff. So that's it right now. Just wanted to thank you for listening. This is E.F. Ortega, and this is Career Profiles, and we will definitely continue to work on this. I've got a lot more to ask you, but that's it for right now. This is the first episode of Career Profiles. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.